We freely speak of dreams, we marvel at what they conceal, but in my wonder world, each sleeping vision is so real. So I believe and hope that all the things I see may one day bring such truth and peace as we can feel. Free from this waking world, deep in sleep's mystery, my will is free to wonder carelessly. At times it's not so far from what we call reality, and at times I know I wonder if it all could come true.
It takes some time to flow back, to immerse again into the stream of body emotions and body perceptions, spontaneous after one bar has turned on the recording device. It is not the crap's last tape as Beckett was, experimenting with the writing about a man who is listening to his last tapes. It's a kind of postmodern symbol of the reflexivity of art. Art is writing about art. Writers are writing about writing. The end of the age of representation is here. You cannot simply obliterate and forget the fact that you have turned on the recording device, which is an external symbol of your consciousness, self-consciousness. It's even doubling the self-consciousness. You must be self-conscious to turn on the recording device because you want to, that's paradoxical, that's typical flow of the degeneration of experience into, you don't have the real word for it in German. In English, we have erleben, living experience. We must coin new expressions. So in German we have erleben, spontaneous, passive, merging of the soul fields without reflection, to be found in children, animals, and maybe plants. Individual organisms, their soul field merges with another soul field dynamically, and the inner, correlation to it is the erlebnis, a passive soul experience which is not reflected It is a different way of a mirror. The soul mirror is simply, there's nobody who's looking at. This is what we call self-awareness, in the sense that it is not self-consciousness. It is, you feel what you feel, but you didn't comment on it. And this commenting, this hidden reflecting, this hidden kind of controlling and having it and counting it as your experience is called in German Erfahrung. So we have to, in English, we have to distinguish it. We call it cognitive experience. Egoistic, kind of, banking, as if your inner world was a bank account. You counted to your possessions. It's the profit you get from the passive, spontaneous experience of the soul and the body. Cognition is a parasite, as we have it in our biocentric phenomenology. So if you are you simply get hold of the guitar because you feel like that. After some time you get into a condition of flow, what the modern world, this kind of workshop and initiation cults today and happenings maybe used to have it in the 60s. The performance disappears. The consciousness of performance disappears. And then there is this happening. Happening happens. The actors stop pretending and performing, they improvise. It's extremely difficult, extremely difficult. You can say that this kind of fashion of happenings in the 60s was deep. There's a deep, at least the theoreticians who introduced it, the theoreticians of art, a predicament of the, of the human race at the peak, at the beginning peak of its self-representation in various media, the chronic self-consciousness, which eats away the life energy of the soul and body. Boom, certainly started in the 60s and was then advancing to the digital madness of today. And all the devices that can represent sound, image, speech, printed media, pictorial media, acoustic media, they are externalized mirrors that enhance the acts of the ego, which we have already defined as 5 categorically, our enemies of the spontaneous soul, passive experience, and spontaneous passive body perception. Empfindung in German, Leibempfindung und Erlebnis der Seele. These are the 2 channels of life. And I have just read 2 paragraphs of Nietzsche for 1 hour, maybe, and I have made so many notes that the text actually disappears from under the notes, and this is the paragraph 230 from Beyond Good and Evil, and parts of the paragraph 229. I will make a photo of it so that you can see it. It's about about knowing, the act of knowledge as a kind of self-control, as a kind of being, in a certain sense, malicious, almost sadistic towards yourself. You force yourself to stop experiencing phenomenal flow, and you want to understand it. The same applies for reading, studying, understanding. Oh, this is a terrible predicament. And I mainly have noted, from the perspective of biocentric phenomenology into those pages, Nietzsche is mixing it all together, confusing himself until he comes to the terrible equation: life itself is will to power. Okay, it has to be segmented so that you can understand it. I cannot do it now, but he does not have a clear distinction between passivity of soul and body experiences and the activity of the ego. Okay, so he has a good moment. He has a perfect, clear insight where he defends the Dionysian power, the overflowing cup of life, against this kind of moral, self-centered, pretending, institutionalized self, and the institutions themselves, like the church, like the state, and like the university or so. He would attack them very strongly, the super egos, the institutionalized conceptual power of mainly morally motivated groups of people. And that, at the same time, these are mostly decadent in Nietzsche's conception, and in my conception also, because weakness, bodily weakness, brings about fear of fear for your own survival, and it immediately enhances the speculative thought how to defend yourself, how to come to your beefsteaks and clothing and houses and whatever you need, so that you don't have to fight for it yourself with your bodily power. So nevertheless, it is a detour, and I will present the page here so that you can immerse into it. If you can read German, no, it's unfortunately it is even in Czech. I sometimes have the desire to read in my mother tongue, where I can feel the deep difference of the meaning of words intuitively. So I read the Czech translation of the Beyond Good and Evil, but you can have an idea of it if you see how many notes there are. And what I have discovered, according to Ludwig Lages, for me the best interpreter of Nietzsche's work, who has discovered that the split goes so deep in Nietzsche that in every one of his texts you can trace this double meaning of the will to power, his central kind of masterpiece. It's either the Yahwistic will to power, the egoistic, the moral, the reinterpretation, the re-evaluation of all values on the human cognitive plane. These are the great rurals and Machiavellis and whatever, and religious fathers who, invent completely non-existent worlds, and they assign to them a value of truth, and even of greater truth than the phenomenal experience of this world. These are all the heavens, these are all the moral kind of, the re-evaluations of experience, of the passive phenomenal experience. This is the Yahwistic, egoistic, priesterly, will to power, and I call it egoistic also. And then you have the Dionysian, the cellular, the metabolic, processes that rightly should not be called will to power, because there is nobody who is willing it. So it is a metaphorical expression that Nietzsche somehow fell in love with. Wille zu Macht, ne? Maybe he was continuing his competition with Schopenhauer, who had it also. Den Wille und Vorstellung, ne? Schopenhauer's main work, Wille und Vorstellung, the will. Okay, so the Dionysian, metabolic, let us say, plant-like, animal-like, biospheric forces that grow and use photosynthesis and chemistry of digestion and growing of plants and mitosis, the division of cells and growing into various forms, morphogenetic fields using as a software for this growth, soul field is completely without ego and superego. It is the great mother embracement of all what lives and mixing it together in a kind of fluid merging of the software and fluid, constant, continuous embodiment of the software into the living matter. Okay? And nobody is guiding it. There is an innate principle which is not will to power, which is passive attraction. Passive attraction of the similar and passive repulsion of the dissimilar. That you can even go deep and say, when something is attracting something or something is repulsing something, what is the drive behind it? Why does it do that? Why does it so happen? And there we have a mystical insight. I have a mystical insight. As I lived very close to animals and plants for a long time, I must return to that. I'm starting to be decadent in this this period of my life where I have left the life of a farmer, where I was continuously immersed in plant life and animal life and biospheric weather phenomena, wind, rain, sun, very important. And at the same time, I used to work as a physiotherapist, coming to, touch the human bodies and bend the muscles and the bones and stuff like that. Just intuitively listening to those organic shapes that came into my investigation room, diagnostic room. I had the extreme privilege to come from a farm where I was surrounded by animals and plants, working in the cow sheds and the horse sheds, and then come in the afternoon to the physiotherapy healing place, and I have my diagnostic room, and bodies come, people come. It struck me immediately how different they are from the animals. I even had some jokes like, and people knew there were small towns or small locations in the countryside where I was working, because I preferred this to big cities, okay? And that people knew, this is the guy, he works in the cow shed in the morning, and in the afternoon he works here as a healer for our bones and bodies. And and they like it because they talk about it in the in the taverna or in the bar or in the restaurant. And I had a certain aura of a healer because these people were farmers or craftsmen, and they respected it. They even admired that I have said openly, without the farmers, without the craftsmen, there would be no life, no beauty, no landscape, no health. So I was working like that, and I came to the healing place. It was a small kind of studio, and I like thinking I could tap these ladies and old gentlemen on their shoulders, say, now let's go, as I was tapping the cows in the cow shed, like saying, now let's move, we go for milking. So nevertheless, you feel what I want to picture. And as I was touching the bodies, I had this intuition that they are the living matter of the biosphere in a human shape, and the morphogenetic fields that shape the plants and the animals, that's the same or similar. They shape also the bodies and bones and muscles and sinews and organs of these patients that come there with pain in the knee or in the neck or in the shoulder or in the back, and so and each of them was individual, and I could touch them and I could bend them, and I felt clearly, intuitively, they are suffering because the ego, the personal ego, and the superego, mainly the superego, which has through thousands of years forced them to live in a certain societal, ritual, of working and saving money and trying to, to get a good marriage and just buy this or buy that and grow certain crops and pay dues and taxes to the state and stuff like that. All this superego have to go to the church and stuff like that. This all has changed them very much. Okay. So this cellular metabolic processes that are guided by this principle of attraction of the similar and repulsion of the dissimilar, and the biosphere of the planet for millions and millions of circles of the planet Earth around the sun have led to those shapes and forms of plants and animals and landscapes. Okay? And only with the arrival of consciousness did it start to split in two, streams of life. Let us say. Let us use the Nietzsche's description, but we shall change it. Definitely, we shall change it. I see the life stream as a kind of soup, as a kind of kaleidoscopic, impressionistic soup of morphogenetic fields that are constantly, fluidly merging, attracting similar and repulsing the dissimilar, and at the same time immanently embodying into the living matter, into the body of the earth. We could say also that the software of the biosphere, yeah, embodies into the hardware of the biosphere. The hardware is the matter, the living matter. According to Whitehead, the philosopher, even the landscape is living as an organism. Mountains, trees, rivers, lakes, and so on. Back to the childish beginning of my speech. Do not lose yourself. Myself. Whose self? Do not lose yourself in the description. Or at least try to return back from time to immerse into the flow of passive soul and body experience. Body perception and soul vision. As I lie here on the mattress, on the mat, on the floor, and I feel the vibrations of the strings on my brow. Pleasantly, very pleasantly does it penetrate the cortex, and the nasal cavities, and it makes it possible for me to go into this cognitive speculation, because it naturally is. A speech is a reflection, but we can try to wait for the vision to arise, the insight to arise, to appear in front of the soul's mirror, which is not mirroring in a sense of doubling. It is just awareness. It is not self-consciousness. It is not split in two. There is not the image and somebody who is observing the image. It is only the image itself, and we would say immanently searches into embodiment in words. So we have two stages of embodiment. The software of the biosphere, the soul of the planet, embodies into a living matter. And this kind of function can advance in human beings into the embodiment in words, okay? Because we have a very sensitive soul field, okay? Very diverse, very deep, very outstretched. This is what makes the human race different from the animals. That our soul field can stretch to a vast distance. You never see a dog like me standing on the shore of the lake and looking over the lake like 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers to the distant mountains, and experience a kind of desire to go there, to be there again with the farmers in the cowsheds high in the mountains, look at the glistening tops of the mountains and get hold of the wheelbarrow, go into the cowshed, roll in and take with pleasure the handle of the fork and the shovel and feel this living, senses and the huge eyes of the cows and the mumping mouth and the enormous belly and the horns. This is life. This is pure life. But the dogs never do it. They just run like idiots with eyes fixed on the tennis ball, which the lord of the dog has in his hands, or something to throw, the eyes are completely fixed on it, and you see, material as if a stream of attention is following this hand, né? And once he throws that, jumps into the water like absolutely happy, but also in a kind of stupid monotony, brings it back, né? Brings it back and sits there. So this is what it is. This is an external embodiment of the phenomenal experience of the dog, which is very narrow. The dog, or all animals, experience the immediate surroundings of their body. They have a keen sense of smell. Some of them can have a selective, sharp vision, as the eagle. Some of them can hear far sounds, like the dolphins or whatever, faraway sounds, especially in the medium of water, or the cries of other birds in the medium of the air. But it is always, very narrow, selected to a certain species. The species, their own species, and then the possible species of, they hunt, and the danger of the predator that hunts them. That's it. And since distant mountains beyond the lake are absolutely indifferent to them, because there comes no danger and no profit from it. So why did I say this? So it happens sometimes. And the passive, yes, as I said, two steps, two stages of embodiment of the biospheric soul of the planet Earth. First, into all the plants and animals and landscapes throughout the 4 billion years of evolution. First, only into the body of the Earth itself, because first it was a mineral, burning kind of, lava style and stormy seas, and what acidity and what all was there in the body. And when the planet was shaping, and only later it became plants and animals. So this continues fluidly, and what I intuitively feel as a drive behind these 2 principles of merging of similar software and embodying of similar software into the shapes of plants and animals and landscapes, and behind the complementary drive to remove the dissimilar, software, is the growth, the deepening of the soul of the earth, because the soul of the earth experiences itself, through all the organs of perception and emotion. There are no organ of emotion is the soul, right? And through the body and the soul, through the perception of the body and the emotion of the soul, the Gaian soul is experiencing itself. And actually it strives for enlargement. If life is growth, then even the inner worlds will have tendency to grow. As soon as there is a opposite tendency to close, not to grow, then it is direction to the end, the dying of the organism, be it singular kind of species, or be it maybe even a planetary soul. Once the planetary soul starts to reduce the scope of its experiences, then the planet is doomed to die. So there comes then the second stage of embodiment. This is where a special animal, like an ape on our planet, becomes very, diverse in his emotions and body perception. And then he invents a media to communicate with his kin. First pictorial, or first shouting, then some pictorial scratches on the rocks or in sand, and it goes on and on. You know it all. Then it comes to words, sounds that mean something from the immediate surroundings, and then it comes to the signs, symbols. For these sounds and alphabets are born, and then we go to mathematics, and then we go to our time, printing press, television, radio, and digital media, and you have it. Embodiment of the inner world into the media. And there comes a danger in losing the first impulse of the biospheric soul, was to deepen and enlarge and diversify the scope of perception, the body perception and soul's emotion. All the kinds of eagles and lions and fish and big trees and small trees and rivers, and they all experience somehow passively, even if very rudimentary, like a river, like an ocean. I feel it. They have an enormous soul field, but it is rather, monotonous compared to ours. It's powerful, but unified. And with the arrival of man, there is the birth of the ego. And at this moment, the danger is born that the ego is not passive. It is not, dissolving permanently in the embracement of other egos. That is not of other egos, but not of other soul fields. Okay? It plans, it has intentions, it has the will to power. This is the correct expression. Nietzsche should use it only for this kind of intense, directional, selective beams of consciousness. No? The act of consciousness is one of the expressions of the ego, and the ego nested itself in the human soul field. Naturally, where should it elsewhere be? Its effects are software-like, The ego does not grow a special organ on the human body. It grows only, it invents and constructs weapons to defend itself. So the killing machines, guns and whatever, knives and lances and swords, are an embodiment of the ego will to power into the biosphere of the planet Earth. And for that, it had to force the soul to change, the human soul to change, to become, scientific, to become, workmanship and the invention of, chemistry and, mining and extracting metal and using it in steel, changing it to steel and sharpening it and hammering it and producing weapons, is an embodiment of a certain software that was possible only in the human soul by the intervention of the ego. So finally we come to some philosophers I have heard who really describe the machines, like airplanes and trains and war machines mainly, also as monsters, as kind of dragons that slip into our world from a certain software realm that is out of the designer boards, and now it used to be calculated and drawn on paper. Now it is done digitally, and now it even reaches the deepest depth of what we suppose to be the model of the material stuff out of which the planet is made, to the subatomic world. So this all is an expression of the egoistic will to power, which does not passively succumb to the general process of attraction of the similar and repulsion of the dissimilar software. It intentionally changes the software of one individual human soul in which it has nested, and changes the phenomenal flow and the perceptual flow into, that is the emotions of the soul and the perception of the body, changes into intentional directed acts of the ego. And of them we have 5, as I've described many times: self-consciousness, the act of egoistic personal self-consciousness, the act of personal egoistic consciousness, the act of personal egoistic will, and there we can rightly say to power. I want this, I don't want that. It immediately follows the realization of the self. I am I, and that's why I have preferences. I mean, the preferences are still, that is very interesting and is rarely understood. The character of a body and a soul of an individual is unique. Okay, the character is unique. The changes of the character that are induced into it by the ego, are also individual. So everyone has specific character and preferences, every one of the human beings. Even animals and plants have, and landscapes have character, but this one is purely grown, not intentional. It's expression of the desire of the planetary soul to be rich and diversified. That's why it is stupid that the egoistic will of the human race and the super egoistic, when many egos join together, they create corporations, schools, and ideologies, and philosophies, and sciences, and they try to reduce the diversity of the biosphere to profit, basically, be it an intellectual profit, okay, that they are the only ones who can be called the true ones, or money profit, when they change the diversity of the planetary life and into homogeneous materials. They rape basically to speak as a poet, they rape the mother and make out of her body homogenized materials that can be, processed chemically and pressed into gadgets that then can be sold for money. So this is the person egoistic act of willpower. I want this, I don't want that. You see, the merging of the similar morphogenetic field and the repulsion of the dissimilar morphogenetic field, which was the natural growth of the planetary biosphere, is changed by the influence of the ego in the human soul field into wanting, egoistic want of this, and I want this, and I don't want that. Repulsion of this, what I don't want, and absorbing that what I want. And here Nietzsche also makes a mistake very many times. So if one reads Ludwig Lager's Nietzsche analysis, the psychological achievements of Nietzsche, then one gets to the core of the problem. That in Nietzsche there are two voices speaking all the time. Sometimes the one voice is silent, because of his good physiology, of his health, and of his wandering in the mountains and stuff like that. And he writes purely as a Dionysian voice, and we love that in him. And then he gets, into a middle level where he is not running in the mountains, where he's sitting on his writing desk. And then both of the voices start to interfere among themselves, and you have a Dionysian voice and you have a Yahwistic voice, two archetypes that are in a mortal combat inside Nietzsche's soul. And that's why all articles, all aphorisms, all books can be analyzed in this way. And the main confusion is the constant recurrence of this equation: lives equals will to power, which is wrong. Life is absolutely without any egoistic or super egoistic will to select, in an intentional way. Okay, there is merging, there is repulsion of the software, but it is driven by exactly the Dionysian impulse for richness, for diversity, of the biospheric soul, to experience itself. The planet, has grown many children, animal and plant-like and landscape-like, and they all are rich in experiences, in perceptions, and in emotions. And this is what the planetary soul, likes, if we can quote unquote say, as a mother to see her beautiful children to grow and be manifold and different. Whereas the egoistic impulse of man reduces, selects, and above all unifies and homogenizes the richness of the body of the earth into materials that they can be then composed into machines and technology and goods, and everything is finally homogenized and simplified and unified into the last super abstract dead unit, the money. The abstract units of mathematics that have become the ruling hypnotic value for the souls, for the raped souls of the human race. We have mentioned the tendency that could be good the second wave of embodiment for which the human race could be, used by the Mother Earth, would be to embody the experiences and emotions and the body perceptions once more in a sign, symbol, language, poem, artwork, This is the good, the life-supporting art, okay, which is not, and there is another Nietzsche's mistake, and which is maybe, I don't know yet if it is a root of all the problems he has in the ontology of the soul and the will to power and body and cognition, or if it is one of the effects of this constant strife between Dionysian and Yahwistic kind of models of the world. That is, that Nietzsche sees art as a illusion and nice, a very necessary and important error, but nevertheless an error, a welcomed error, and illusion, in German, der schöne Schein. Okay, it seems only to be real, but we like to be embalmed in the seeming, because it is so pleasant, and it unifies and it reduces, and well, we could say from the biocentric phenomenology point of view, truly, art, and Nietzsche agrees also with this, is an intensifying kind of increased density of these phenomenal experiences and emotions in a poem, in a musical composition, in a work of painter's art like Turner or Van Gogh, the great masters, Botticelli, Dürer, and the great musical composers like Beethoven. And so you can feel something shaking you, shocking you, drawing you near by its intensity. This is a dance, as if the background flow of merging and repulsing morphogenetic fields of the biospheric soul that usually express themselves in growing bodies of plants and animals and the succession of generations suddenly gets a kind of a jam, a kind of spark, a kind of flame, a kind of altar picture where everything this is condensed. I've been searching for this word, condensation. Condense. Art is condensed life once more, but condensed. But for Nietzsche, nevertheless, it is an illusion. Okay, whereas for us, for biocentric phenomenologists, it is true. As well as the beauty of nature, for us, is not an illusion, like Kant and Nietzsche in this interpretation. Nietzsche and Kant are the same. That it is an illusion produced by the ego, okay, of man, by the soul of man. But they throw these all constantly together. Nietzsche does not distinguish properly between the cognition and the soul, okay. That's the problem. He has this fixation, will to power is everything, will to power is life, and will to power is at the same time the ability to re-evaluate all values. Will to power is at the same time the digestion of your stomach, okay, and so great problem. Maybe because Nietzsche was ill frequently, and as he was recovering from his serious, handicaps, he might have felt the power of returning health in the body and yet he came from long days of suffering in which only his clear mind and will to power made him go on. So it would be the physiological cause, if you would, so to say, out Nietzsche to beat him with his own terminology. His partly decadent physiology is the cause of the fusion, of the wrong fusion of will to power, his bodily recovery, and his cognitive will to power, which he experienced during the stage of disease that he will go on in any case. After all, Klages, in his book, The Psychological Achievements of Nietzsche, points out that even his great idea of the eternal recurrence is a psychological instrument to prevent suicide. The argument follows like this. These two archetypes that are constantly in clinch, a mortal clinch in Nietzsche's soul, Yahweh, the priestly archetype, and Dionysus, the life-celebrating archetype, really are combatant to life and death. Whatever the one experiences, the other will abhor and try to eradicate. And the final eradication is in killing the other archetype. And in the individual Nietzsche soul, it expresses itself by sudden impulses to suicide, to finish it all. And he writes about it also in this aphorisms where he talks about so many kind of heroes and warriors of the soul and spirit who have gone into the desert and have killed themselves because they didn't want to be a battlefield of conflicting instincts. He called it instincts, man. If you have one virtue, be happy, my friend, because it will guide you over the bridge to the Superman if you transcend it. But if you have conflicting virtues, great problem, okay? And this was the case of Nietzsche. They had the conflicting virtues, conflicting instincts, and conflicting archetypes. And the idea of eternal recurrence, that means I am going to live this life as I lived it so far, forever and forever, endlessly repeating identically, is the best shield against, committing suicide, because you will commit suicide endlessly once again forever. So that prevents you from doing it. And that was Klage's interpretation of why the idea of the eternal recurrence was shaped by Nietzsche's desire to stay living, So back to this conception of art. Art is a condensation of life and could be truly, and is in the great artist, a continuation of the embodiment of the planetary soul, surpassing the material embodiment into the bodies of plants and animals. Man, as also an animal embodiment of the biospheric soul, gradually achieves the ability to represent, to condense the wide range of his emotions and the wide range of his body perceptions into artworks, music, painting, rhetorical artwork like poetry. The planet is, the planetary soul is pleased with it, and the great artist admire the mother, and they change her into a lover, into her muse, into their muses. But at the same time, the decadent bodies and decadent soul would produce an art which is a condensed form of decadence. Okay, terrible, celebrating death, okay, and decay, and we can see it in much of the modern art. No? The same in society, in politics. Politics that is celebrating life would be a great achievement of the biospheric soul, that societies could become gardeners and beautify the earth, as used to be in my remembrance and hope. I love the Minoan Crete before the arrival of the Greeks, the Asiatic barbarian horses, men on horses. I love the Crete like 2000 BC, where the island became truly a garden of Atlantis, because all the institutions, all the mother priestesses, all the handcraft and art and agriculture and the cults celebrated the fertility of the mother, okay, of the mother island and of the mother goddess. This could be also in our age, if we realize that we are crazy, that we have succumbed into those egoistic, decadent art and egoistic, decadent, super egoistic, as I've said, super ego is the father of all religions and corporations and institutions and governments and ministries and stuff like that. Unfortunately, mostly people who are themselves, not Dionysian lovers of the earth, they concentrate there and they pull together and they make a self-referential body that, what do they want actually, the politicians and the bosses in the corporations and the military men? Do they want to survive? Yes, probably. Instead of the idea of the eternal recurrence, they put in front of them, money and intrigue and ideology and propaganda. That certainly is not what is in congruence with the first embodiment of the planetary soul into the plants and animals and landscape over millions, maybe billions of years. And as this impulse is so old, I mean, you can look even at the first bacteria. If you imagine that the oxygen-producing bacteria in the shallow seas have been, doing their small metabolism for 2 billion years. You have to imagine, imagine one circle of the planet around the year. You can do it now. You remember the last year, and then remember 10 years, then remember 50 years, the whole life, and it's nothing. Make it 1,000, make it a million, make it 1,000 millions, and there you have the time spent during which the bacteria were absorbing the sunlight in the shallow seas and eating whatever was there stuff molecularly from the sea and producing oxygen. And this was already one of the first expression of the desire of the planetary soul to enrich itself by growing plants, growing animals, and sending the animal organism all around the planet to all its corners to perceive and to experience emotionally. And then the man comes and he can do this in far or deeper and further scale, no? And then he can embody it and he can condense it in art, in expression, in the speech. As I said, the bardic speech is trying to do this, to embody the flux of phenomena and visions into sounds, into words, and so that he does not loses the fluidity of the visions that penetrate him. He uses the vibration of the string on his skull, as I do, and from time to time he digresses into vocalization to renew his childish innocence. The songs of innocence must be there, returning back to the arms of the Great Mother and starting again and again to do what she, desires, to admire her, to celebrate her, to love her, to give her presents, beautiful clothes and jewelry in form of poetry, music, painting, and so on. And this could be also on a societal level. Institutions like churches, schools, farms, craftsmen guilds, sport clubs, gardening societies, animal kind of care societies, and after all, medicine, in which I was participating as a physiotherapist with a kind of mystical surprise, watching the bodies of men enter my diagnostic room, sit down. I was enjoying this very much. I must return to it maybe, because I had read in Nietzsche. Actually, Nietzsche was Nietzsche's ideas were one of the impulses to leave university, where I was studying literary sciences, linguistics, and philosophy and psychology and history. When I felt like drifting away from actuality, living in the conceptual world. And I remember there were two important steps in my life where I realized I'm going astray. There were two kind of periods during my studies where I felt I'm going astray. One was very positive. I will mention them. One was when I realized that to be a member of this academic elite, I have to speak their language. So I was reading my professor's books and was, trying to speak like him, so that, I will have those old complicated German sentences that sound very mysterious and deep. Second instance of my, dangerous feeling that I am, losing touch with reality, with phenomenal actuality, was that I started to make big sheets, cardboard sheets, of what I know. See, I was always going home from the university, and I felt like, you see, I don't know what I know exactly. I have to collect it. So I would take big cards of cardboard, big sheets, and I would write on it what all I know, and I put it in the garage, and I would go there and say, I know all this. like, it remembered me from Jonathan Swift, a story about Laputa, where the philosophers who wanted to discuss something or present some teaching, they would have to present immediately material objects for each of their ideas. So philosophers would have some servants who would pull a huge wagon full of objects that would materially represent their ideas. This is what I was doing in the garage. The positive two opposing factors in my life, because I am a Gemini, and always two sides, was that I was immersed in Theravada meditation during my studies. There was a course of very unusual offer from the university, a course in Buddhist psychology and Buddhist theory of the society and the theory of the self, and practical meditation. And it was of a very high quality. There were psychiatrists, there were psychologists, sociologists taking part in this workshop. It was about 2 semesters, and there were also monks from Sri Lanka who were teaching practical meditation. And even though the philosophical intention or background of the Theravada meditation, which I learned, was to, leave all the phenomenal world, to go and immerse yourself and rise into the Brahma, into the fully abstract world, I luckily changed the method there. Well, I constructed all those charts I understood all those charts in Abhidhamma and Visuddhimagga, which are the insider recipes for, deep meditation. Like, I was like, what does this mean? When shall I enter the realm of being and not being, the realm of no perception and not no perception, and stuff like that? Very scholastic systems. Where shall I overcome all my emotions, that dissolve all my emotion, all my thoughts, all my intuitions? Where shall I be in the pure realm of nothingness? Sunyata. Everything is empty and stuff like that. And I was turning those wheels of Abhidhamma against each other and saying, well, there were 52 factors that made each chitta, each moment of human consciousness. There are 14 relations, karmic relations between the moment of consciousness, the chittas. There are 121 formal qualities of each chitta, of which some of them are kusala, heilsam, some of them are akusala, unheilsam, or healing and not healing. And I was thinking, this is a kind of like a Mayan calendar of the soul. I will master it and I will rise into Brahma. And at the same time, I was playing tennis with my beautiful German girlfriend Ursula, who was busily making money as one of the first genius software engineers in the Switzerland. And she drove a nice Cabrio Alfa Romeo Spider. She had a nice velvet brown dog, a Cocker Spaniel, and she had a lot of beautiful shoes, slim legs, and leather minerals. Woo! A long blonde hair. And I was saying, I'm going to rise into Brahma. I'm going to dissolve all this. She's only a collection of khandas. What is she? I was talking when I was going home. What is she? A collection of bones and muscles and sinews and cells, and not to mention what drove Jonathan Swift to madness. Celia, she's so beautiful, but Celia shits. Okay, that she's also the collection of inner organs. But fortunately, I meditated always outside after a beautiful breakfast and tennis game with my beautiful, sexy Ursula when she drove away in her cabrio to Switzerland to make money. I said, now I'm going to suffer. Dukkha. I will see all through this dukkha. All is suffering. And I was saying, well, that doesn't seem the fact. This morning tennis and morning, erotic games and a beautiful breakfast on the terrace overlooking the Lake of Constance in a villa where we live together. Is it suffering? No, it is pleasure. And I don't want to, I cannot give it up. So I went intentionally to the lake and sit down and meditated Theravada style. And then it occurred to me suddenly, yes, it is the other way around. Our re-evaluation of our values. I have to abandon all these idiotic commands of the Abhidhamma, the Visuddhimagga, and the monks, and the idealistic teachers and psychologists. I have to let go of all this cognitive shit. Yeah. And that reality phenomenal flux of the beauty of the lake, of the soft wind on my face, of the rushing of the leaves above me in the trees and the splashing of the waves suddenly, became Zen, Zen style, pure, not disturbed by the cognitive desire to be enlightenment. So this was the conflicting parts in my fate when I was studying at the university. And it repeats itself again and again. Later on, I succumbed to some mystery cults of Christianity, of otherworldly sects. I was also deeply influenced by Rudolf Steiner. But to sum up, these are all cognitive acts of interpretation. In Nietzsche, they were caused by his bodily sickness and by his recovery from those terrible headaches from his blindness. And when he was recovering, and this is his exception, that's why another proof that he is split between Yahweh and Dionysus. He had an enormous plastic, and he even writes about it, bodily faculty to recover from all terrible, degenerative diseases. And in the moment of transfer from where you read about, about the reconvalescence, how everything tastes fantastic and soft and beautiful and lovely to one who recovers from a disease. And in this moment, we have to find the cause, the impulse, the emotional necessity to unite life and will to power. Okay? The cellular metabolic power, which is not a power, that is the problem. It is a passive ability to merge the cells or the software of the individual organism of Nietzsche's body, his liver, his heart, his lungs, his eyes, his brain cells, to merge with the software of this, to merge with the software of the biosphere, of the super powerful, strong, large fields of the lake, the sea, the ocean, and other animals also. And you see it as a continuous flux. It goes from the bacteria I was talking about until it reaches you. You are your software. The software of your soul is a continuous result of merging and repulsing of various softwares that started with the bacteria and those, 2 billion years ago, no? And through all the plants, through all the animals, the impulse was passed on, and now various bodies were shaped, a lot of experiments, and a lot of lost, species, and because they were dead ends. They did like take the reptiles. Reptiles were 165 million years the dominant species on the planet here, and then they were wiped out. If you consider man, who came from some squirrels after the reptiles were eliminated by the crash of this, what is it called, meteorite, huge meteorite. An obelisk from the space came and hit the Mexican bay, and dust arose, millions and millions of dust and fire, and all plants have died, and big animals died because they had nothing to eat, to feed on. And the small mice-like, squirrels-like creatures could hide below the earth, and they could sometimes survive by eating the corpses of the reptiles, and they slowly, the climate became again, the sun came through, plants started to grow, and then animals like mammals were born, and several generations of mammals, separation from the birds, and so on, and fish, and so. And you are there at the end of this evolutionary, and you have to see it as a continuous merging of software and removing from embodiment species that do not enlarge and deepen the soul field of the planet. You are here now with the only one species which can carry these steps of embodiment further, to embody in art and in an artful speech, let us say, which is the most direct embodiment. If you can somehow, in your mystical rapture, to be part of this ever growing, merging and repulsing fields of, informational fields, morphogenical fields of, let's say, the souls of the biosphere. If you can be a kind of a reader in this, you can call it a reader in the Akashic records, and not a reader, a viewer, a participant, participatory soul. You participate, you have the epinoa, you have been given the creative imagination. It is in your genome. It was given to you by Sophia, let us say, in some narratives like the Fallen Goddess scenario of John Lamlash. You have this very similar. And he is a great expert in Nietzsche also. Sophia gives you the creative imagination into your genome. because you are a human and you can anthropos in those narratives, and you can bring it further. You can condense the software of the mother into your artwork and even to your speech, which is the immediate naming of what your epinoa, your creative imagination, is showing you. It's passive. It is definitely not the egoistic or super egoistic or institutional will to power which reevaluates or values or dictates the value simply out of the center of the egoistic power or the super egoistic power, which is the institution which decides now even what should be called truth, what should be called untruth, what should be called fake news, what should be called correct and incorrect, which should be called racist and not racist and stuff like that. This is the cognitive will to power. This is the enemy of life. Methodically. Only those bards and philosophers and artists who speak from the soul of the earth should be granted a kind of regulative power for the whole society. So you have it. And that's why it is so confusing to read Nietzsche without knowing about this split in his soul, without knowing that he is constantly confusing life with will to power. Typical example, the priest should be the embodiment of the strongest will to power. Yet, on another play and many places in his text, the priest is an expression of a decadent will to power. So where there is a complete logical contradiction. If he is the expression of the strongest will to power, then she should be the strongest Dionysian hero, laughing and dancing and throwing out his wisdom without caring where it is falling, Yet he is, his health is not good, he is pale, and he is intriguing and inventing stories that are false, that, bring the population to wars, even one religion against the other religion, and which forces them to pay for every act of the priest when he supposedly connects them to the metaphysical realm that he has invented. Okay, so this is not possible. So where is the truth? So Nietzsche is split simply. And you can read it and you can see it, and I have devised a method. Reading his text, I have two graphic signs. I have a darkening, I darken all those words and put them into a sharp, squares, where he is expressing the egoistic or super egoistic acts of will to power. They are always intentional and reflexive and self-aware and manipulating. And I have a sign ER plus, which means egoistic reflection plus, okay? And I look at the individual words. I don't let myself be confused with the syntax of the sentence, where he himself is losing, the distinguishing power of the power to distinguish life and cognition. Life and the cognitive will to power. The cellular metabolic merging, we must not call it will to power, the cellular metabolic merging and growing of living organisms on one side, and where I have words that even in the realm of the soul describe processes like this, I make a kind of wavy line around, and I put a sign like S soul R minus, SR minus, soul, and not reflexive in the cognitive sense. Yeah? No reflection, no doubling, no representation, no pretending. Okay, only spontaneous expression. Okay. Wow. So I hope. Oh, these are harangues. These are morning harangues. Woo! I have this. As everybody who studies Nietzsche and who studies Klages and who lives in a kind of postmodern times is constantly torn between these two possibilities, because we are at the end of a long tradition of egoism and super-egoism and institutional education and stuff like that. So, and we meet it among our friends, and we lose our loves because we cannot keep the love in the depth of the soul, spontaneous kind of merging of the soul under the wings of cosmogonic eros. This is the book everybody should read who somehow feels that I have something to say. It's the book from Ludwig Klages, Vom Kosmogonischen Eros. This is for young people especially, or middle-aged people who still hope to find the true passion, love, partner love in the life, to distinguish between sexus and eros. Sexus being the expression of the will to power, egoistic will to power, and eros being the expression of the planetary soul, because you come to the personal eros, you come only through the elementary eros of the planetary soul. So I have these, ups and downs as a Gemini also, and in the morning I feel what is that? I have to tune myself to the eros to fly out. And yet in my room there are files of, letters from the state and the government and the rent and all this kind of bullshit. I am so far that I cannot read this text without feeling the hand of death getting on me. The syntax, the words, the absolute emptiness of this law language, of this institutional language is so, it tastes of death. And I always, when I'm in a reasonable period of my day, I say, you have to organize your papers, you have to answer the letters and stuff like that. And I said, no, I would die. I am already almost dead. I was several times almost dead. Now I'm 71. I feel like, I feel really, if I get into the Dionysian flow of images and motion and music and and voicing only that which appears to me. I feel very young and creative. But there is this warning mask of death and Yahweh, of the state, dragon, and envy and hate and stupidity of the majority of people, of the herd, is waiting in background. So after I finish this, I make the second breakfast, and immediately I even cannot get on the bike because it is broken. I get my rucksack and the tennis rackets and some food, and I run to the lake and I talk with the waves and the wind and the stars. Stars are not there, but they are behind the clouds, so I feel them, and the sun and the wind, and swim, and I live in the continuous flux of phenomenal experience. That is the metabolic power of life. It is not will to power, it is passive participation, merging of informational soul fields, morphogenetic fields, and embodiment, immediate embodiment into the cells of your body. That's why you are healthy. And if you are lucky to be an artist and still can survive in this dead world of social death, which is ignoring the true artist out of envy, hate, and not understanding, not to talk about the current wars and current economic crises and current perversion of medical world, killing people instead of healing them, education making them stupid instead of enlarging their soul fields, agriculture killing animals and plants instead of taking care of the human and earth garden. To make this renaissance livable, I have started this project, Warrior Poet School, which will try. I don't think it is easily possible, but if there are, individuals that feel that what I am saying is very right, very true, and it is the only way to, organic health and soul beauty and creation, both for the individual and this group and the family and then the society and then the planet, they should join in these courses. And if they have some means to support it, please support it, because I am not able at the present moment. If I want to spread it, if I want to live alone, I will do it. I have done it for many years. I will stop all publishing. I go to the farm somewhere in the mountains, and I just work for food and shelter, okay, and I enjoy the life with the animals and the fresh wind and air and the changing elements. But if there should be a change for our children, for the next generation, if the embodiment of the Sophia from the earth soul should go through the human race, if the human race should not be erased like the reptiles, because it is a dead end. It is a dead end truly, and only after 5 million. It was a risky step to make the ape, deep, to make the soul field of the ape, of the human ape, deep, because you see it? It is only 5 million years, let us say, roughly, since the squirrels have started to evolve into apes and the human apes and so on, then into these various kind of stages of the Homos, Neanderthalensis and Javanensis and Heidelbergensis and so on, and what kind of they were. Now Homo sapiens sapiens is there. And in a short span of 5 million years, this experiment will fail and the planet will be destroyed by atomic war and by genetic engineering. So it is a risky. The reptiles had the time 165 million years, so much more, and nevertheless they were erased. So there is no problem for the biospheric soul of the planet to erase the human race as a whole. But why did she give us the creative imagination? Why did she give us the possibility to be wise and formulate all this, not only in scientific books and scientific speeches to which we go with a car or an airplane and kill millions of trees to publish it, that nobody reads it, we get our title, we get our tenure at the university, and we get morally, high that we are, supporting life. Okay, maybe it is all fake. Maybe it is all just it's a kind of performance, ecological, moral, religious, social kind of NGOs performance. And as performance, these are acts of cognition, of ego or superego. The green institutions, green governments, all institutions, superego projects. And as such, they have no effect on the soul field of the planet. They have only a material effect on her body. They're not achieving anything and allowing the corporation and the business and the warmongering idiots in the governments to continue this poisoning of the body of the earth. The body of the earth is being tortured and poisoned and torn apart by all kinds of violence. Okay? So this is what is true. And phenomenally the planet experiences it. And her beautiful project of, evolving gardens of beauty and diversity, in which phenomenal experience of animals, plants, and man will be enhanced and deepened, and then finally put into art, elevated and synthesized and condensed into works of art like this, is lost. So what is the answer of the mother? Erase this, this violent, ugly, envious, stupid, reptiles in form of man. Okay, why does it not happen? Why did it not yet happen? As a man who loves his muse, as a poet who loves his muse, we are inclined to dream that she loves also back, that she admires and loves us. And as a loving mother, she cannot simply erase us. So this is our hope, and I conclude, because the time is shortening, let us say, the intensity of destruction is rising. Well, I don't know very much. Maybe there are places in China and in India and in Chile and in Argentina, New Zealand, Australia, in the Himalayas, and Canada, and in the tropical forest. Where children and men and women live in a kind of easygoing, phenomenal embracing of the biosphere, and still everything is okay. This always surprises me when I go away from the town I live now, which is called the Pied Cow Constant, that there is a lot of space, even here, even in southern Germany, in the Alps and so on. So maybe it's because of these hundreds of millions of human souls that live a peaceful, slow, agricultural community lifestyle, that there is still hope for us, for the Westerners. Okay, why are we special? Well, while we are torn and while we have a keen logos, while we have been trained in Renaissance and antiquity philosophy and torture of the scholastic chambers, and enlightenment and running away to the ecstasies of the romantics, and then staring blindly in a shocking awe on the emptiness as postmodern. We are very expensive animals for the evolution. Well, I hope, okay, it was a worthwhile experiment to raise, to let grow such expensive plants and animals that are full of contradictions. But, and I'm getting to the point, this was also the fact, this enabled us to create modern technology, to invent, construct, not to create. It doesn't grow. We constructed it out of abstract representation of the body of the Mother Earth, of matter. And we have constructed also models of human body and soul and mind, and have developed modern medicine and modern technology, especially in the realm of weapon and travel and agriculture, and modern medicine is especially in the realm of pharmaceutical industry and manipulative drugs and surgery. Surgery is a good stuff. I mean, exempt surgery from the criticism, because surgery is handcraft. It can repair human body. Okay, this is good. And certainly I exempt the holistic medicine, which tries to heal by plant medicine and kind of soul-loving methods like bioenergetics and psychosynthesis and shamanism. But nevertheless, the power of our destructive technology and power of our destructive medicine and kind of cognitive sciences, which result in pedagogy and psychology of the institutional type, they are very dangerous. They are very dangerous. That's why complementary, also the poets and the bards of the West have maybe the keenest appreciation of this danger, and can formulate it thus that more and more Westerners can change lifestyle and become more passive, more children of the earth. We cannot preach to those who live like children of the earth until now. We can only, protect them from using too much of our technology. Now we have China. Think about China. It is like, it's like the West, doubled and tripled. Crazy stuff going there. So much technology. So much modern stuff. I only hope that the inherent Taoism and the Chinese culture, when this craze of capitalism and growth is over, that the Chinese deep soul will return back to Taoism. I wish that sincerely. The same time Russia. I hope that the Russian deep soul, which is poetic, which likes to live in communal forms, will return to it when this craze of having to defend themselves against the decadent onslaught of the West will be over. And I hope that the West, which is Western Europe, and the Anglo-Saxon domain, what should it return to? To Heraclitus, to Goethe, to understanding Nietzsche with his split mind, to biocentric phenomenology of Ludwig Klages, to some Renaissance lute music and Renaissance character lifestyle, not to Renaissance mysticism, because there it starts again with the Gnostic lifestyle. All European philosophy and science is a continuation of gnosis, of hoping to find hidden, abstractly formulated, equations of mantras or invocations to control the earth and to control the rest of humankind. We must not do this. We must abandon gnosis and to return back to, yes, Minoan Crete. I finish with that. And Minoan Crete, the origin, the oldest European civilization, which was unfortunately destroyed through the onslaught of the warrior bands of men on horses from Asia, 1200 BC. And on the roots of this culture, the Greek and the Roman and then the Semitic, stands our European culture, which then tends to gnosis, to will to power, to cognitive will to power, to institutionalized superego will to power, and loses the embracement of the Great Mother, of the passive phenomenal experience lifestyle, which was on Minoan Crete. That is where we have to return. And we can use Nietzsche when we understand well that he is split, his moral criticism is correct, much of the white shields we put on our dirty clothes must be removed. This is the seeing through the lies, intentional or subconscious, in our European morals. But as far as his split between the Yahweh and Dionysian archetypes in him, we have to be well aware that he speaks sometimes from the depth of embracement of the Great Mother, and sometimes from the Yahwistic preacher who is fascinated by the control and domination, okay, of the biosphere. And he is well aware of that, and he condescends that it priest may be crazy or may be living in an illusion, but it is necessary because life basically strives on illusions for Nietzsche. And some of the illusions are simply lucky. We survive because we hit a good, congruence with the biosphere. And some of the illusions are destructive, and well, they will destroy you because they are completely away from the true reality of the biosphere of the planet Earth. So, but nevertheless, all is an illusion. Well, why not to say that if we hit a proper illusion, which is in congruence with the ontological reality of the biosphere of the planet Earth, why not to say that it is true, that is factual, that beauty of the planet is a true beauty because she is, like in the narrative of Nag Hammadi, she's a woman, she's Sophia, embodied in Gaia. And Nietzsche also has his two friends, lady friends, who are Sophia, basically. It is his wild wisdom, and it is life itself. And he talks to them as women, and they talk to him, and they ask him, do you mean me, or do you mean life? Is wisdom one with life? Okay. Okay, I'll leave you that. So support the project in which speeches like that can be voiced, and in which lifestyle shall be supported and is supported, that will lead to the survival and beautifying lifestyle. Even in Western Europe, we start on these locations: south coast of Crete in the winter, Lake Constance and the Bohemian forest and the Alps, in Nietzsche's tradition in the summer. Ahoy! Greetings of the sailors. We are sailing on distant sea. It seems that it is impossible, but we sail on.